All right, welcome into our roots. So, just as an opening admin note, I do have the on-call phone, so I'm still, so I may get distracted a little bit during the service if the on-call phone goes off. Other than that, today I kind of wanted to talk about Patacara, and then tomorrow we're probably going to talk about Mahavajrapati. Just as a nice way to kind of end off this month, right before we move into the Mahayana observance of the Buddha's birthday. Not necessarily the Theravada, in fact, definitely not the Theravada observance, which will happen sometime in May. But we're going to go through, today we're going to talk about Patacara and her story. Because I think when times are the hardest, sometimes we kind of lose ourselves a little bit, and it's always good to just kind of go through and look at life with the lens that says, okay, yeah, things are not bad, and sometimes we need a little help in remembering who we are. Sometimes we need a little help in remembering what we're here to do, and that's kind of the story of what Patacara is all about. That and some transformation, right? So we'll get into that, but yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Also, I do have a pretty serious bit of congestion going on, so bear with me for that, or bear with me through that. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhutam saranam gacchami, dhammam saranam gacchami, sangham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi sangham saranam gacchami. Panati pata varamani skaparam samadhyami. Alinnadana varamani skaparam samadhyami. Surameraya manja kamma dattana Varamaniska param samadhyami. I think we'll just do a quick little 5-minute meditation today. So do feel free to join me. And those who would like to do a little bit more meditation later on, either after the live portion is finished or whenever you feel is appropriate. If you're watching live, do feel free to do whatever meditation you want after the service. And if you're watching after live is finished, do feel free to pause after our 5 minutes and meditate as you see fit, and then come back. So. Okay, so Patacara. I had the page marked. Oh, good grief. So while I'm finding the page, I'm going to kind of go through her backstory and talk about why it's so important for us as Buddhists to kind of look at how, to remember who we are, what we're here for, and how we should, there we are, how we should practice, right? So Patachara obviously did not start out as a nun. In fact, rather the opposite. She was, from a very young age, she was identified as a very, very beautiful human being, physically attractive, kind of, the kind that would get all kinds of notice. And her parents named her aptly, right? She was named Rupavati, which means the village beauty. And as she grew up, they wanted to protect her because, okay, back then this would have worked. Now it definitely does not. But back then, she would have fetched a very, very large kind of like dowry at the at her wedding. She would have fetched a very, very high bride price, as it were. And so as she did that, right, as she grew up, her parents secluded her. They put her up in they put her up several stories up and away from places where men might see her and consort with her. So she grew up. She was very stubborn. She was very, very, very stubborn. Very sure of herself. Very, very willful. And so as she grew up, she was very willful, she was very beautiful, and she knew it. And so one day, I think usually the stories say at about 16 or whatever, again, there's lots of reasons why this story wouldn't probably work in modern times, but if you translate the ages to age of maturity, whatever, it might work almost. Still probably not because of the bride price thing, but so she decided that she was going to choose for herself rather than let her parents choose who was going to give, the best bride price. And so she was going to choose who she wanted to be with, which it turns out was one of the male servants in the household. And she decided that she was going to do her thing. She did, and actions have consequences, right? So she and this servant guy did their thing, and all of a sudden she finds herself pregnant. Bad times, right? Willful teenager. This is thing that things happen. They do. They shouldn't, but they do. And so here we have pregnant Rupavati and male house servant, who I don't think he ever got a name. I've never heard his. I don't know that he ever had a name. So she finds herself pregnant, and she says, "Okay, well, we're just going to magically vanish to make sure that I can live the life that I want with the guy that I want, the guy that I chose." And he kind of tries very hard to convince her, "No, just let me go. I will escape. We'll, things can be better out later, right? We can figure things out later." No. She goes. So they go into hiding because her parents do eventually find out, and they're super upset, right? So they escape to some unknown town, and as would be the custom, right before she's going to deliver, she wants to go back home to deliver with mom, right? We saw this with the Buddha, we saw this with, you know, a number of others, which was why Chulapantaka and Mahapantaka were on the side of the road, and which is why Kisa Gotami's baby was on the side of the road. So she wants to do this, and he tries his very best, very, very best, to make sure that she does not. And he tries hard to convince her, but she is very willful and very stubborn, and she is not going to hear it. So one day while he's at work, earning the labor, you know, earning the wages that he needs to take care of her, she slips out and starts on her way back home. He comes back home from work, finds her gone, and starts immediately chasing after her. Fortunately, he's quick enough that he catches up with her, and she delivers on the side of the road instead of getting all the way home. Not a great time, but okay, they go back home, and you know, she starts raising little one, finds herself pregnant a second time, and very much the same case, right? She demands that she go home so that she can give birth, you know, with mom this time. And this time he says, okay, but I'm gonna come with you, right? And some would argue that he was still at work, and she did the same thing again. Did not learn from her mistake the first time. So, either way, they are making their way back home, and a storm approaches, a really big storm, a big monsoon storm. And so they're stuck on the side of the road, and she starts feeling the birthing pains, and says, okay, nope, we gotta stop here. And he says, okay, I will make us a shelter. And so he goes off into the bushes to kind of get branches and leaves and anything that he can that would maybe give them a little bit of shelter, give her a little bit of comfort. Well, he kind of doesn't come back. And so she's stuck in the middle of giving, she's in labor, she goes and gives birth. And after she does, right, so she's got 2 babies with her, and she gives birth in the middle of the night, and things are just looking bad all around. No shelter, new baby, a little toddler with her as well, and guy can't be found, right? So, okay, they stick it out until morning, and in the morning, she kind of wanders around a little bit, and sees that, oh, he was in fact gathering sticks and such, but he got bit by a snake, by a viper, and the poison, the venom, killed him. So now she is without husband, but with 2 kids. Her only choice is to make it back home. So she tries, she keeps going, and eventually she gets to the point where she crosses she reaches a river that she's going to have to ford because it's too deep for, it's too deep to kind of to walk through. So she sets little one on the bank and takes, sorry, I got backwards. She has the toddler stay on the one side. No. Yeah. No, she says baby on the first bank. She carries toddler over to the other side, and as she's doing that, a hawk sees the newborn and says, oh, lunch. Goes and snatches up newborn. And so she's kind of losing it a little bit, tries to cross the river and is screaming and crying, and little one thinks that that's his sign that he's supposed to go to mom. Well, he kind of gets in the river, and then because it's monsoon and the river is pretty swollen, and toddlers don't necessarily swim so well. He didn't make it. So she has now just lost her husband and her 2 children, and it's just her. And she's distraught, just utterly destroyed. So she makes her way back across the river and starts working her way towards her hometown. She sees some fire, right, or some smoke, and she thinks, "Oh, the villagers must be getting ready for the day. Oh, that's good, that's good." And she sees one of the villagers coming her direction, and she says, "Hey, do you know about my family? You know, how are they doing?" And he says, "You're better off not asking me." And so she asks again, and then she asks a third time. And after the third time, when he says, "Yeah, you're better off not asking me," she asks again, and he responds, "See them? See that smoke over there? That's their funeral pyre. The house that they had collapsed in the monsoon last night, and that's us trying to do funeral rites for them." Well, Rupavati just flips her lid, absolutely flips her lid, totally forgets herself, strips herself naked and starts running around in her distraught, crazed, obviously like it's understandable, right? You lose all those people in one day. Things are not going to be pretty good. Things are not going to be well upstairs. It's going to be a bad day. And so she's running around, and she runs to this town where the Buddha just happens to be teaching at that time, and she's running around like a mad woman, as is totally understandable in her case. And everybody's trying to avoid her. Everybody's trying to be like, "Oh, crazy lady, don't want to see that. I don't even know. Get her out of here." The only one who says anything to recognize her and kind of help her to regain her senses, to come back to herself, is the Buddha. And he says, "Sister, cover up." Simple, but effective, right? He recognizes her as a human being and says, "Look, we know you're going through some stuff. Let's put some clothes on, we'll talk." Right? "Sister, cover up." She sees somehow that he's not trying to evade her. He's not trying to pretend like she doesn't exist. He's not trying to not see her pain. He's simply saying, "Hey, look, we'll figure this out." And she accepts that and comes back to her senses, takes one of the robes from, depending on the story, she either takes it from the Buddha, like the Buddha either hands her a robe or somebody does. And so she sees that, and she immediately requests ordination. She immediately comes out and says, "Look, I whatever you did, like, you saw me as a human being. I want to be a part of that." And so she becomes a nun, and her path as a nun, she eventually became known as foremost in discipline, foremost in conducting herself with discipline, right? In knowing the discipline that monks and nuns were supposed to know. She was very, very dedicated to that. So whereas before she had been very willful, she turned that willfulness into determination. She turned that kind of like, that she turned her own drives to do what she wants into drives to do things better. And she's still struggling, right? Because obviously the path to enlightenment is not necessarily the easiest. It's not like an immediate thing that just magically happens. It's a thing that you got to put effort into. And so she kind of was a little bit anxious. She had a little bit of concern, and so she talks about this in her enlightenment verse, because eventually she did get past that, and she became very dedicated to teaching other nuns how to do discipline, how to discipline themselves, how to kind of like direct themselves so that they could reach the goal as well. And she was actually one of the few that the Buddha allowed to ordain others, right? So not only did he ordain her, but he also said she's good enough to do this herself. She's good enough to figure out which of these, future nuns and eventually nuns are worthy of ordination and can live in that setting. she's good enough that she can teach them, she can guide them, she can help them with the discipline. And so after her enlightenment, we have her verse. Furrowing fields with plows, sowing seeds in the ground, taking care of wives and children, young men find wealth. So why have I not experienced freedom when I am virtuous and I do what the teacher taught, when I am not lazy and I am calm? She's kind of talking about her struggles with it and how, the things that she struggled with. And then she says, while washing my feet, I made the water useful in another way, by concentrating on it moving from higher ground down. Then I held back my mind, as one would do with a thoroughbred horse, and I took a lamp and went into the hut. First I looked at the bed, then I sat on the couch. I used a needle to pull out the lamp's wick. Just as the lamp went out, my mind was free. So she kind of saw that it's a process, right? And where she had originally been, she had originally come into it from this place of utter devastation, totally distraught. She learned how to do things better. It wasn't an easy process, and that's what she's getting at here, is that it's not an easy process. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes discipline, it takes trying, it takes making that effort to internally still the things that are going on inside. Sometimes you need a little help in getting there, right? She definitely needed the Buddha's help to recognize that, yeah, she's suffering, she's still a human being, but she's just like the rest of us, she was also suffering. And the Buddha saw that and, said, sister, cover up. Simple, effective. Recognizing her as a human being, but also recognizing her struggles. And saying, yeah, and basically saying with that, yeah, we can get past this. So, in our own lives as Dharma Buddhas, where might we find ourselves in a place where we're looking at others and seeing that they're finding the results that they want and getting the things that they, finding success on the path, and maybe we aren't, right? Well, maybe we just need to put a little bit more effort into it. Maybe just a little bit more effort, maybe a little bit more discipline internally will help us get there, right? Maybe we just got to keep trying and be determined in doing so. If we can do that, maybe we can find that goal too. Worth considering. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close out from here, and then we'll get you guys back to your day. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, dhammam saranam gacchami, sangham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami. Tatyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tatyampi dhammam Sangam Saranam Gacchami. Panatipata Brahmaniskam Param Samadhyami. Adinadana Brahmaniskam Param Samadhyami. Kamesumicachara Brahmaniskam Param Samadhyami. Savana Brahmaniskam Param Samadhyami. Surameraya Manya Pamanatana Brahmaniskam Param Samadhyami. Alright, thanks for watching, Darn Boots. We'll see you guys next time.